In this video, we will be discussing the shifting power dynamics that Couldry identifies as part of the experience of being part of the extended audience. The relationship between the audience and the media industry is changing greatly according to Couldry, and we've discussed some of this before in the course so far. But it's changing because the possibility of being on the other side of the traditional divide between consumption and production is greater than it ever has been in the past, mostly through platforms like YouTube, also things like Twitch and Reddit, even Twitter, all this kind of Instagram. All these platforms allow you to be a producer and gain a fairly large audience in a way that you probably wouldn't have been able to in the past. We used to have a very clear distinction between people that consume media, the audience members, and those who made it. And the fact that more and more people are able to make media themselves and share their own content, build a platform, build an audience, changes that relationship a little bit. And so both changing social relations, meaning that we've come to accept the idea of being a media producer as a reality, that it used to be this crazy dream that people would have. Oh yeah, she thinks she's gonna go and make it in New York or go to Hollywood and be a movie star or something. That's just ridiculous. Now it seems more tangible, it seems more real. And the ways technologies have converged have also made this more technically possible. And so the experience of being an audience member is familiar to us, but the idea of what it might be like to be a performer is more widespread than it ever has been. And as we become more media literate, we see the possibility. It doesn't mean all of us will actually take on that role of being a producer. It doesn't mean we all are making our own content all the time, but it's just something we're more aware of. We have a greater awareness of the possibility that we could be on TV or be in the media than we have in the past. One of the things we all have to be kind of careful about, though, is the assumption that that experience is going to be the same for everyone. That if you see someone become really successful through new media platforms, then, oh, it's obviously just really easy, and so you can just do it yourself and you'll be just as successful. It's one of the concerns parents have started to recognize, for example, around the success that people have had streaming games on things like on platforms like Twitch, where they starting to report hearing their kids say that their goal is to be a game streamer and or an esports competitor. And you hear those stories of a kid who's like 12 years old and he makes $1 million in a year just playing Fortnite on Twitch or something. And so kids are seeing that, and I mean, you play video games and you know what Twitch is, and you could get a camera and make a video, and so you should be just as successful. And so that's one of the things we're going to have to be careful of as we think about this idea of the enhanced audience, is that a lot of times people, because it seems so possible, the potential is there, then it seems like everyone can be just as successful. And just as we're familiar with our idea of being an audience member, what that role is like, and how it has changed in how new possibilities are available. We're also familiar with the idea of media performance. And even as opportunities have increased, we still recognize that the number of people who are actually media performers, who actually are big stars, who make a lot of money doing media related stuff, is still relatively low. And so we've often traditionally thought of things as a continuum. You had production on one end, and these were media performers lived, and consumption and audience members on the other end. And so we all tend to place ourselves somewhere along that spectrum, that continuum. But more of us may be believing that we have the possibility of being on the production end than we have before. But when we think about media and media industries, even as this potential for audience members to become producers themselves changes, we have to always keep in mind ideas of power. And so Couldry draws on Michel Foucault's notions of power, and how we look at power not just sort of concentrated in major institutions and major corporations, but how it spreads out throughout social life. A lot of different activities contribute to sustaining particular power relations. And it's not just that it's been hard in the past to convince some big media company to hire you and let you be a performer. There are other aspects. The fact that not everyone has the technological availability of the equipment they need to become performers. The fact that not everyone has the financial stability to take a chance on being a media performer, to invest in the equipment, to know that they'll be okay if they try it for a couple of months. And to be a successful media performer, you really do have to invest in it. You have to take the time. And it takes effort and energy. And not everyone can do that. Not everyone can invest that time. And not everyone has the ability to say, okay, I'll give this a couple of months. I'll stream every day and try to build up that audience. And if it doesn't happen after a couple of months, then I'll may reconsider. But not everybody has that ability to do that. And so when we're thinking about this dispersed idea of power, it fits well with our dispersed ideas of the audience. And so, again, it's a society-wide phenomenon with all of us in various ways involved in sustaining the traditional ideas of power. The fact that we all invest in the same platforms, and we all go to Twitch and go to YouTube and go to Instagram to post our material, just reinforces that these platforms have the power. And so we want to, again, be aware of some of those differences between media institutions and media audiences. A lot of big corporations still have a lot of power to decide what appears in their content, who appears, what they talk about, while our abilities to produce content, share it with others as audience members has increased a lot. A lot of the content we're still focused on sharing is stuff made by big media companies. So they have a lot of power to share that, to control that sharing of content, what is considered media. And media companies also have a lot of power over what information circulates widely, particularly in their production of news content. And so this control of an ability to shape how information, entertainment content, all this stuff gets shared in a society is known as symbolic power. So it differentiates symbolic power from things like economic, military, and other forms of power. And John Thompson, in his book, The Media and Modernity, defines symbolic power as the capacity to intervene in the course of events, to influence the actions of others, and indeed to create events by means of the production and transmission of symbolic forms. And so the media has this kind of power. Big companies obviously do have economic power as well. They can invest a lot more money in their products. They can buy out competitors and all this kind of stuff. But most of the power of the media is symbolic. It is the ability to define what stories we tell, what information gets attention, all this kind of stuff. And so that's something that big media companies still have a lot more control over, a lot more ability to exercise than the average audience member does. And so we wanted to give some attention to these problems of power, that as we think of the audience as more extended and we're more able to all participate and be media producers as just average audience members, we always need to remember that the media corporations still do have a lot of power in society.